各位观众朋友，欢迎来到 CGTN 的直播，我是崔慧奥。今天是东京奥运会的第11个比赛日，然后中国金团也是继续高奏凯歌。就在昨晚的一场羽毛球女单的决赛，咱们中国的陈雨菲是赢了强敌戴资颖，顺利的拿下了这块金牌。那么关于中国羽毛球队这个王者之师，它背后有哪些故事？今天我们请到了前世界冠军龚伟杰，跟我们一起来聊一聊中国军团的表现。
观众朋友，大家好。
对，我们首先聊一下，你觉得这一次中国军团的这个发挥怎么样？有点低调出征，但是表现出乎意料。
我觉得在这次的奥运会东京之旅发挥的非常好，我觉得可以说是闷声发大财。其实在整个报道当中，其实很少听到就是很多报道说到羽毛球怎么样，可在我们就是没有听到的情况下，我们中国的羽毛球运动员在5个单项里面
全都进入
决赛，这是在12年奥运会，就是伦敦奥运会的时候呢，拿过5块金牌之后呢，就是
没有出现过。
We've got 5 gold medals in London Games, but this seems to be the second peak of our time. And also, we've already gotten 2 gold medals, 2 silvers, and also with the male single and female double. We have more to expect. The female games this afternoon will be between China and Indonesia. Of course, we have some opportunities to win. Let's talk about yesterday's show. Chen Yufei was facing very strong opponent, Dai Ziying. I saw this game during the live show. It wasn't even game. Many people said that they almost had a heart attack. They were very nervous. With 3 rounds, the score was 18 for the first round, 19 for the second round. And in this competition, Chen Yufei from China did outperform with good tactics. And what do you think of the tactics? Of course, thanks to the guiding principles of the captain. No errors. And saving the highly technical rounds. So, in yesterday's games, you may realize that Dai Ziying was good enough, but the thing is, she made some errors, which could have been prevented. That may be because of some habitual behaviors. Yes, she herself made some errors on her own, for example, making it out of line. So we need to be cautious. We need to minimize our error. That's otherwise leaving room for your opponent. 2 to 3 scores, maybe because of errors or being lost.
唯一放心的点是什么？就是陈雨菲她的失误率低，她能够救一些高难度的球。可是戴资颖在
Chen Yufei benefited from low error rate,
而且陈雨菲的心态也非常好，
so she got more scores. And she had very good mentality, even though it was her first time to participate in Olympic Games. She said that although she had practiced a lot and she had the eagerness to win for China, but facing Dai Ziying, she still had a strong opponent. But actually, in reality, Dai Ziying never made it to the top 8 in previous games. According to my knowledge, our opponent was Thailand for Dai Ziying. Dai Ziying had the likelihood to lose, but finally she won with 2-2-0. I think this Olympic Games is a very good practice ground for Dai Ziying. She made progress. If we look at the history of Dai Ziying, this Tokyo Games is already her best shot. She outperformed herself. She almost made #1 of female single badminton. For the Japanese team, they really want to make breakthroughs in badminton, and people had high expectations for Japan. And Japan was leading the way in 5 individual events. What do you think are the causes? I think the first reason is this is their games, so they have higher pressure, and they don't have the means to relieve the pressure. Since we are the host, does it mean that we can expect a big hand from the audience? But in reality, there is no audience here because of the epidemic. So their mentality may be undermined. In Indonesia, the Japanese player had an accident. And she used to have an operation on the eyes. We never thought that Japan may lose to South Korea, even though she had an injury. But she was out so early, beyond our imagination. So she had misjudgment. She never made the initiative to serve, and she had poor rhythm. So in this process, I think Kento Momota may have some influence from the operation on her eyes. We used to believe that the double mix is the best shot for China team for badminton. But out of my surprise, we didn't win the champion in the most promising event. In 2018 and 2019, we were also having high expectations in the games. All of our fans think high of this couple. Why? Because in all of those tournaments, they had very good performance. But that's the thing about competition. They have pressure. For mixed doubles, in all of the competitions, those two fellows used to have very good performance. Wang Yilue and Huang Dongting, they were almost like top 2 in the world. And they want to be the #1. So that's very high pressure. And as to the audience, what's your opinion about the #1 and #2? You have different expectations of them. Even though they haven't had any exercise in the previous year, we still believe that our mixed double has very high success rate. So maybe they were under the pressure due to the high expectation. In their heart, they told themselves that I must win. And for Huang Dongting's couple, they are #2. In the top events, What do we need? We need very simple mental support, not complex technical channels. They are already far beyond the criteria. In the final game, the score was 21-19, so with only a difference of 2 scores. And in their preparation, Zheng Siwei, for some time, was hurt. So Huang Yaqiong herself was insistent on the training by herself, since her partner cannot cooperate with her anymore. That's also a psychological challenge. I think she must be on the edge during those days. As you know, for Olympic Games, they certainly have very high hopes for themselves. They hope to nail the champion in Olympic Games, and they have confidence for themselves. Of course, while the partner was injured and couldn't make it for the training, they will be influenced. So Huang Yaqiong found another way to help herself. Actually, to play the games with your partner and to play the games with your opponent, that must be different experience. When I am fighting against the overseas opponents, it must be more challenging. For final, it's simple. Just go all out and give whatever you have. And the difference between semi-final and final is the mentality. For Huang Dongying, once you win, you will cheer for yourself. But if you lose, I've lost before. I'm not fearing loss. So she had nothing to lose. But otherwise, if you're thinking, I must win, you will have some mental problems. So I think there are several factors: mentality, errors, high pressure, and injury. If you have won too much before in your history, you are fearing loss the most. And for the male double games, it was finished very quickly, but for Liu Yuchen, it was a breakthrough. No one has expected him to make it to the final. For China badminton team, different events. Before the members of the 5 events headed for Tokyo, we never thought about making the 5 events to the final games, let alone champion. We need luck to get the champion. But we know the spirit of the Chinese athletes. But for the male double, we have only one team. And we are confronted with so many strong opponents. In the second round, we were quite relaxed to win the games. So to make it to the final, we think it's good enough. In competition games, we have the saying about having some tactics while bearing in mind those of your opponent. For the group of Lin Yan, they were controlling the games in the first half, but they also leave some room for correcting their errors. That's like 70% of energy to 30% of energy. I think they made their best. If they didn't make it to the final, what's our opinion about them? We must look at the whole picture.
如果说李英慧、刘雨辰在小
They
组赛
already
的
did
表
their
现
best.
而且巴金斯是挺
If
危
Liu
险
Yuchen
的，
did
很难
not
打的。
一对
make
欧洲
it,
的选手，
今天好像是丹麦
丹麦
的一队，而
我看挺被
且
动的，
especially when they're
第一局也输了
facing the
还
Denmark
打到
opponents.
决胜局第3局，对，也是不容易的。所以我觉得，
所以运动员都非常不容易。
当我们
It
看到
was
闪
hard
光点的
won.
同时，我们也要看在这
We
个
must
闪光
see
点中间的
their
之
strength.
前的一些故事，其实
In the
都是拼
meantime,
过来的。如果没有
we
拼过
need to
来，
learn the
不可能进
stories.
决赛。
Everyone
包括我们说
did
到
their
这一
best.
次羽毛球
Otherwise,
队
they
的整个
couldn't
表
make
现
it
用
to
我
the
的话
final.
说是低调出
Speaking of
征
the
为
overall
什么呢？就是
performance
赛
of the
前没有定非常高的目
badminton
标，
game, I
对，敷
think
衍
you
几
had a
线，
low
认为在
profile.
混
You
双、
didn't
在
set
女
high
单、女双
targets
这
before the
3个项目
games
上可能
in
有夺金的实力。
male,
首先是
single,
混双
female,
混双
single,
女单是要拿一
and
块
mixed
对，
double.
女单和
You
女双
have
是
the
冲击的一
hope
个
of
姿态，而且你
nailing
因
the
素
gold
在我
medals,
看来是
especially
长
for
时间的缺
the
少国际比赛。你像
female
全英公开
single.
赛咱们没去。
But we
1
also
月
have
开始的
some
这几
loopholes.
站
For
泰
example,
国
we
咱们
haven't
都没去，
practiced for
很
long
多人都
because
担
of the
心
epidemic.
这
We
几
didn't
乎
make
相当
it
于
to
零热身去了东京
to
赛场，会不
Thailand
会
in January.
不适应？会不会
So
不适应比赛
everyone
的
was
节奏，不
worried.
适应对
Would
手
you
的
get
变化？
accustomed
你
to
对
the
对手也不了解，
competition
他的进步到什么程度你都不知道。
pace in
但
the
是从
Tokyo
比赛来
Games?
看，
You never
中国队好像
know
没
what's
有
the
出现这样的
status
情
quo
况，
of
你觉
your
得是什么原因？
opponents because
首
of
先
such a
在
long
近1
blank
年
time
近1年半之间的时间里面
with
呢
no
没
exercise.
有比赛过。
In the
我们
past
始
1.5 year, we haven't exercised and competed before.
离开过。
But even though with no competition, we exercise
也可以
in the
看出就是
training a lot.
我们国家的强大，
是。
因为有我们国家的强大，才能保证
And we can still feel the strength of our nation. Only with the national strength can we guarantee the training of our athletes, and we can mark the games.
在奥运会当中能够发挥的这么理想，超预期。
But why can't we have
我觉得离不开
the ideal performance in the Tokyo Games?
虽然说没有跟
It's
很多
thanks
对手
to
去
the
在
teamwork.
1年半的时间里面去
Even though we haven't
我觉得
competed
因为对手他从来没
in
变
the
过
field
那
against
可能对咱们
our
也不了解。
opponents,
哎
but
你说
our
中国队天天
opponents
练，但
are
到底练
still
到什么
the
程
same
度？
ones
对
as
他也不
before.
了解，可是他，我相信所有的
And
对手
likewise,
没有
our
我们
opponents
这么好的保障
weren't in the know
而且
of
在保障的
our
同时
status
呢
quo, and they
因为
may
我们的
not have
我
such
们
good
分主要对手
guarantee of their
主要
exercises in the
对手
past 2 years.
他的打法
And we have our key
太
targets.
大的变化，
We
他唯一变化
learn
的就是心理
a lot
和
about
心
our
理
key
还有
opponents.
在
They
这
don't
1
change
年
their
半时间的训练
tactics
时间
frequently.
就是我能不
They
能
may
够
have different mentality.
能不能够处
In the
对
past 1.5 year, they may have some
这
psychological
才是至关
fluctuations.
的问题。
Did
这是
I
我们在这个
practice
比赛可以
enough?
看到的。我们中国羽毛
So
球
I
队的所
think
有的运动员
mentality
呢
is the key.
在整个比赛
But
过程
in the
当中能看
process,
到
as you may
身体和
realize,
精神状态
都非常好。
for the Chinese
非常
badminton
说明
team
赛前的
players,
调
they
节
have
非
very
常到
good
位，
physical
把
and
运动员
mental
的
states.
心理、身体、
They have
技术
readjusted
各个环
themselves
节
to
应
the
该说是
proper
推向一
state,
个晋级的高
both
峰。
psychologically
对，
and
首先我们
technically,
去了，
so
其
that
实
helps
我觉得
to
首先
push
没
it
想这么多
to
才会
their
能够
maximum.
超额去完成的。首先你放平心态，
We
你
never
才
thought
会
about
有冲击的可能。
而且我注意到一
outperforming
个
our
细节啊，就是咱
expectation.
们在备战
So
的
you
过程
need
中，
to
就像你说的，有
have
对抗赛，有模拟赛。
calm
咱们好像是在
mind.
成都举办了一次奥运的这个
In the
模拟赛
combats,
把整个
We
场
used
馆
to hold some
都
mock
装饰成了
Olympic
日本
Games in
东京奥运
Chengdu,
会的场馆
and
的
the
颜色，包
venue
括
in
布置，
Chengdu
连
was
陈宇飞
decorated
进去都说
exactly
哇，
like
简直
the
一模一样
Tokyo
的太
Games
美了。
venues.
我不知道这个是出于
It's
什么样的考虑，
almost
为什么
exactly
要
the
把这
same.
个
That's
场馆
awesome.
都
So what's the
重新装修
consideration
一遍
about
把
the
它
venue
让运动
decoration?
员适应这个东京赛场氛围，真的有那么重要吗？有这个
我觉得
必要吗？
更多的
Is it that important to help the athletes to immerse themselves in the games?
中国羽毛球队
We
所
did
有运动员
delicate
只有
work.
中国的成龙
是奥运冠军。
是奥运冠军，他有过奥运的经历。
Only Chenglong in the China team had the experience of participating in Olympic Games among all the Chinese players. So Chen knows how to play in the Olympic
所以为什么
Games,
我们去
and
用
also
心地
such
去
external factors may
去做这个
influence
事
their
情，也是希望年轻的运动员
performance.
更多的
So when we are preparing the venue,
当时的一
we
些有
hope
可能不
that
一样，可是
the young
能够多了
athletes
解
could learn
多
more
感受
about
一
the
点
Olympic
场外的因
Games.
素
the more they learn about those external factors like the environment, the decoration, that would be more helpful to their actual performance in the games. And as you know, it was a long distance to the venue. So we also simulate the same distance as the Tokyo Games distance. And also in the exercises, your events are also prepared at about 8 o'clock in the morning, as it is in the Tokyo Games. So I think all of those preparations are aiming at helping the athletes to feel like in the Olympic Games. That's very delicate work. I think that explains why China's badminton team has been leading the way all those years. What do you think of the position of China's badminton team? We got 5 gold medals in 2012, in 2016. We weren't that ideal, but this year we seem to outperform again. And we're very open-minded. Japan has 3 female doubles that are very competitive, but we still can handle it. We have always been among the top worldwide. Because we are among the top, in the majority of the big events, we made excellent performance. So we had the atmosphere. Without that atmosphere, we couldn't have such a stable performance, ranking among the top. But in competitions, we need talents. So now we are in Shunyi, the outskirts of Beijing. It was hustling and bustling before we started our live show. What do you think about the number of young talents sent to the China team right now? Can we maintain our strength in the next 2 decades? Once you came this morning, you saw the number of trainees here. We were a little bit worried about the effects of our live show because of such large population. And as you can still see behind us, we have kids practicing badminton. In China, a lot of people love badminton. If we want to book the venue for badminton practices, we can only book the daytime. So I think we are very confident about the number of talents. Because of the large population, we will have enough badminton talents. And also we need to look at the number of players of badminton, not just the 1.4 billion population. I think among all these sports varieties, badminton ranks number 1, unless you're considering walking as a game. One city may be home to a lot of badminton stadiums, but the general public still find it hard to book a place. It can shape your muscles because you need to run while you're playing badminton, and it needs teamwork, especially in double games. It's just like Tai Chi. Yesterday's female single games remind me of Tai Chi. You are conquering your opponent's strength with flexibility, and if you are charging ahead, I will step back. What do you think about the transmission of badminton, particularly in ASEAN countries? Many participants were seen in ASEAN, like Malaysia, Thailand, but what about Europe? UK, Denmark, Spain were strong teams. What's the educational situation of badminton in those Western countries? Badminton is still a minority sports games in Western countries. It's in their genes. For us Asians, we prefer the delicate sports. We need to use our fingers and our hands. It's a complex system, but for European players, they are straightforward. They have power. And in badminton games, you need to take a sharp turn. So in such a nimble and flexible sports, Asians will have the advantage. Tonight, there will be another competition game between Chen Long and a European player. I'm looking forward to it because the two people had different styles and they used to fight against each other before. And the opponent is Victor Axelsen. I believe in Chen Long. I think he will have more opportunities tonight. Why? I'm not complacent, but I think I'm 100% confident in him. But I don't want to put pressure on Chen Long. Just be yourself is okay. And Victor is really afraid of Chen Long because in his previous games he lost to Chen.
像成龙基本上也是杀的比较少，虽然李毛教练回来之后，应该是加强了他这一拍。陈雨菲又是拉掉，以救球为主啊。昨天这个比赛看着就是。陈雨菲昨天这个打法
We don't seem to be aggressive in badminton games, and 90% of our time was spent in saving our scores, not charging against the other actively. So, how to decide on your style? We used to have aggressive players like Zhang Ning, Li Xuerui, who were usually on the initiative. There are different serving styles, and every player has different technical features and physical conditions. If you're on the initiative, you will serve, and if I were on the defensive, I will be insistent on it. So we must be aware of how to get the score with certain tactics. As long as such a tactic can help you to get the score, it's okay. So by that you mean there is no so-called mainstream style of tactics in the world. Everyone seems to have individualized tactics. Yes. The spectators prefer attack and speed. That will create a very fierce competition atmosphere. But in the final analysis, scores matter. What's your style? I was aggressive. So, were you nervous in such big games? Did you have good sleep before? The night before the games? No matter if you succeeded or not, the next year when you participated in the games, you will still be nervous. It's just that maybe the time you were immersed in such nervousness is shorter the second year. As long as it's such a big game, everyone is nervous. But if you had such experience before, the next time you were in it, you will know how to control different elements. For example, tonight, in the males' games, there will be a copper medal winner and Chen Long. Chen Long got gold medals before. That's the difference. It's not just about the different medals. They had different experience. Chen Long used to got silver and finally made it to the gold. But for Victor, he never got gold medals.
今天晚上是金银的争夺，可是我觉得在内心世界当中
Tonight it's about
他内心的这种底气
gold or silver, but in Chenlong's heart,
而且
he had
这次
gotten
中国
gold
羽毛球
before,
队的整个
so
表现呢
he had more
确实
confidence.
是非常的好，而且对于整个团队来说
China team this year is excellent, and we had very high morale.
我还想聊一下，就是
This afternoon there will be a female double. I also want to learn something about Chen
有
Jingchen.
一段非常霸
In
气的这个
Cineblog,
视频啊，在跟韩国打小组赛的时
She
候，
had a
应该
video
说
about
这个完
playing
全彰
against
显了
South
中国年
Korea.
轻运动员的这个个性。我不知道你有没有这种感觉，就是在跟你打球的
In the
那个
group
年代
game,
相比，现在的运动员可
she
能更加释放
showcased
更加张扬，
The
还是说
personality of China
这是一贯
team.
的？
我觉得首先来说
So
我觉
is
得
that
每位运动员
personality
他都有
consistent
他的
among all
特点
Chinese
就是相对
badminton
来说
players?
陈清晨相对会
Every player has their own features.
网
But
络
for
上面嘛
Chen，
会觉得大家会觉得更出彩一些。其实
since
因为
people watched her games on the
只
videos,
有参与过
we think
站在过
her
这个赛场
excellent.
当中的人才能够有体
Once
会。
you were on the
所以有种
venue,
说
you
当
would
观众
agree
所
with
说的时
it.
候啊，就是怎么样的时候，
When the
就是
spectators or the
那个
audience
赛场真的就跟真正的
comment
战场是一模一样。我只有这种示范出来，
the
我
fighters
才
on
能
the
够
front
去放
line
我才能够
were
真的
actually in the
敢跟
battlefield.
对手真枪实刀的去干，去打。
Only
但是也有
when
一些
you
争议哈，有的人觉得好
played in the
像
venue
不是
before,
宣泄也有一种
you will be more
不同的
daring
方式
enough in
有没有
your
更
就
competition.
每一位运动员的方式都是不一样的，只是说在这个比赛当中的过程呢，
Every player has
就是
different methods.
给自己加油，打气，或者给你的同
They
伴
cheer up for
加油打气的
themselves
方式
and they console
就像以
themselves
前我们
or
说看到
their
马林的比
partners.
赛啊，每一个球得
I
分
watched
之后
the
的他那
games
种
of Ma Ling.
叫喊，其实是
After
是不是
every
对对手
score
也是一种震
attainment,
慑，就不光是
Ma
自
would
己这一块
shout
的一
for
种压力的释放。
对，其
the
实像马林
success.
大家都知道，虽
So
然
is
这
that
次奥
a
运会是因为
release of pressure?
也
Yes.
是膝盖交叉韧带的做了手术嘛，因为之前好
Ma
了之后
had
另外一个
the
所以
knee
对于他来说
injury.
他大家都知道啊，马林只要
So for
是
Ma,
赢球之后这种呐喊声确实很
after
足
getting
然后确实会看到
如
到
one
对
你在
score,
场上有这么一个对手，每得一分，
the
他就
shouting could
大
be
喊
heard.
他对你会有影响。
If every
你怎么会
player
克服这种
shouts
影响？
once
我觉得
one
多
score
多
is
少少
nailed,
会
will that have an
因
influence
为
for
首先
you?
马林
More or
不一样
less, it
如果今
will.
天是一个打拉吊的
Ma Ling is different.
他会文静一点，可马林恰恰他是打进
打
攻的，
进攻的，
所以他每一次打进攻把
Since Ma Ling
就他每一拍的
are
效
always
果
on the
制胜是
offensive.
不一样的，所以他的这种气势的外放，
So
他会压
such
住
a
你，他就
tactic
他的
will
状态
deliver
就是要压住你
different
如果你碰到这样的对手，
atmosphere.
你会用什么样的方式去
So
化解他的这种气势？
aggressiveness
首先
can be expressed
比分是唯一的
through
化解
shouting.
还有就是你和他硬碰硬，
and how to relieve the
他喊你也
pressure.
喊，反而
Getting the score
如
will
果
relieve the
说他
pressure.
喊你也
If
喊的
your
同时
opponent is
他也会
shouting,
烦，他首先他心里会有波动，还
You
有一种
can
就是
choose to shout as
把
well.
整个节奏放
When
慢
you shout back, your opponent
让他喊。
所以运动
will be
场上其实
fluttered.
打的也是一个心
And
理
then
战。
you
不
can
光是
also
在技术
choose
环节争
to
锋
slow
的耐
down
打
a
可能
little
在这
bit.
些
Just
环节上，
let him or
你
her
也在想办
shout.
法，不要被他的气焰所压制住，能够把自己的气势提
So
上。
we are always
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about how to
Yeah,
protect
yeah.
ourselves, how to gather up our spirits
更多的打
and
的其实
not
就是
be dwarfed by your
技术
opponents.
他占的层面
In such
就对于
big
我说技
events,
术就是不是说这种不发挥技术，技术的层面它会比心理的层面小一些。心理
tactics
甚至占到70%。
don't matter
就像
that
昨
much
天看
as
陈雨菲啊，尽
mentality.
管
Mentality
领先
may
对手也
be
在苦苦地追
70%
赶这个分差
important
非常小，但
compared
是
to
他其实这
tactics.
口气是顶住了。我们经常说运动员的这口气，
对很多高
Yesterday,
难度的
Chen
球
Yufei had
球
high
队都是
spirits. For
能够
many
奔跑
highly
过去救得起来
difficult
这点确
rounds,
实是
Chen Yufei
打
can
击
save the
自己的
ball.
心理
是有时候你的韧劲如果保持
So
在那儿，可
that
能对
was
手
a
也会
strong
觉得我
hit
今天怎么打都
to
打不
the
死
psychology of
我
your
就着急了
opponent.
就着急嘛。
在
Your
昨天比赛当
opponent
中能
will
看出
get
在这里
very
他
worried
得
since
分在于
he
他
or
的
she
控制机会
may be
他
thinking
丢
I
分
couldn't
也是
beat
在
you
于他的主
no
动
matter what I
这
do.
样一个阵理。所以陈云飞更多的其实几乎没失误，很多高难度的球
But of
都
course,
靠一些
Chen may
品质把
have
救回来
errors when she
我
is
知道
on
像
the
羽毛球
offensive,
队
but
也
she
是
can
离不
save
开
the
非常
ball
好的
a
这个教
lot,
练的
so
团
that's a
队罗
balance.
一刚指导啊。
The success
你觉得
is thanks
运动
to
员
the
在场
captains,
上
for example, the
他教练的
mentors
这
like
种
Luo
指
Yigang.
挥战术的布置，
What do you think about the importance of the mentors on the venue? Will the guidance on the site be still helpful for the athletes? Preparation is very important before the games start. When we enter into the venue, the athletes will have to play by themselves. If your opponents are outperforming you, in the meantime, you can communicate with your mentor. Just like Chen Yufei. Even though in the beginning she was a little bit nervous, losing some scores, but the final score was nailed by her with the same and stable performance. What do you think of the challenge for them? It's a big challenge. Since today we are talking about Tokyo Games, the moment you step out of the Olympic stage, everything is brand new. If you had excellent performance, you need to imagine what's your next challenge. If I haven't gotten any medal, I need to strive for a medal. You need to exercise and mark the performance of your opponent. After getting one champion, do you feel the different mentality of your opponent when facing you again in the future? Yes, of course. So your opponent will have more knowledge of you? Like I said before, usually we had consistent style and tactics, but our mentality changes. No matter how successful you are in the big events, you always need to have the spirit to battle against your opponent. I think that explains why China team had good performance this year. And in the future games, your opponent may give out more to fight you. I think it's going to be a new beginning for us once we step down from the stage. For the next games, it's 3 years' time only. Just a blink of eyes. We need to organize our experience and lessons. In the meantime, we must prepare for the next games. My last question. Usually the athletes wear the slogan like once we step down from the medal winning stage, we need to start anew. For the gold medal winners, once it was over, how can they dive into training? Just like starting from scratch. Let's take Chen Yufei as an example. At such a young age, she got the champion. She must be satisfied, like hitting the target ahead of her time. So how to readjust her state of mind and encourage her to train? To get the champion, you need to train. Only with enough training can you have the possibility of winning the champion in the next games. Of course, we will celebrate our victory. There may be some time of communication, and then we will try to guide her to prepare for the next Olympic Games. She must be at ease with herself. They must have inner peace. We cannot stop our training any day. If you stop there, your opponent may exceed beyond you. We need to rely on repeated daily exercise. It's dull, but only with that exercise can we guarantee our every movement. We need to exercise dozens of hours for just one movement, and I heard that you don't have even the Spring Festival. Yes, we don't have the idea of the Spring Festival. Because we have to train every day. Our days are always the same. And for this year's Tokyo Games, you have prepared for 5 games. So winning the games will be a very relieving moment. And I'm really happy for China badminton team to grasp this opportunity. That's the final target of their 5 years preparation. So that's today's live show. We will have more talks about China's Olympic Games tomorrow. Tomorrow we will talk about China's female volleyball. So we have invited the previous volleyball players to talk with us.